a marketing strategist focused on helping businesses find their highest converting customers. As the founder of ReRev, she blends digital, traditional, and event marketing to drive growth and customer loyalty. A general partner at Black Tech Capital, she has helped direct over $1 million to diverse early-stage entrepreneurs. Passionate about innovation and equity, she empowers businesses and founders to leverage AI, automation, and strategic marketing for success. So without further ado, let's welcome Keyona.
All right, how's everybody doing? So, let's see, how do I want to start this off? I want to start this off with some asterisks, some premises. One, when I originally agreed to be on the stage, it was as a panel, right? As you can see, this is not a panel. The other panelist, I believe, caught the flu, which is rough. I'm not jealous of that. Wishing, sending love and light to my flu-ridden ex-panelist. That said, and that was asterisk part one. Asterisk part two is that I basically just finished putting this together 20 minutes ago. Okay? So you're gonna give me grace. You're gonna give me lots of praise and hand claps and positive reinforcement. Hey, my defense, it was not procrastination this time. Other times, it's between me and God. Okay. So, as Elizabeth so kindly put it, I am the founder of ReRev. ReRev Labs is a company I started because in 2022, when ChatGPT and Claude launched, I was like, oh shit. Like this is a real game changer. And every day since has been this beautiful, often chaotic and hard, exploration of how can I take this new technology and not just make it relevant for me, but dream really big. For as long as I can remember, I've always had really big ideas about what I can do, and not just within the limits of like what I can see of physical reality. But of course, like when it comes to going from daydreams on road trips to execution, implementation, and having an impact on society and other people, there's a big chasm there. And I was like, wow, with all my ideas, it's gonna take me like 5 lifetimes approximately to get all this done. And so when I saw ChatGPT come out, like, I remember like the one dramatic tear that fell down, because I was like, I potentially, anyways, have the opportunity to live those 5 lifetimes, to actualize these ideas, and not just the ones that were based on words or content, but also the ones that required me to pick up some really big new skills. And I was so excited because I'm really intimate with my mind. I spend a lot of time up here. How many people spend a lot of time in their heads? Yeah, a bunch of overthinkers. Glad to be amongst my peers. That comes with consequences. Knowing the limits of your mind also means that you know what you have time to pursue, what you don't have time to pursue. So what I wanted to present us with today, so as you can see, this is my PowerPoint animation. So because I did not have time to make a deck, I've decided to present you with a list of numbers. We're going to spend the next 30, 40-ish minutes going over what these numbers mean for you. So the idea that I want you to take away from this is that you can use, yes, LLMs, yes, chatbots, but AI tools in general to go from I have big ideas to I have big impact. And I want to convey to you, at least in part, how you can start doing that today. So, the numbers that matter. We're going to start with 60 versus 3. So we just talked about that chasm between idea, execution, and impact. It can be so huge and daunting. Let's say getting up and going to the gym That's a lot. You gotta wake up. You have to reconcile with the fact that you're still on Earth. Still 2025, and everything is still happening in 2025. We'll get to that, don't worry. If you thought this was gonna be a Trump-free conversation, you were wrong. Get over that now. That's gonna be good for the rest of our lives. Or at least for the next 4 years, anyways. With everything in your life, especially when you're doing new things, it requires a lot of mental effort to go from I have a will, I have a desire, to I'm actually doing it. Because between waking up and not just getting to the gym, but finishing that workout, you have to get up, you have to put on your clothes, you have to eat. Sometimes you shower, sometimes you don't. And the entire time, you're negotiating with yourself because there's like 4 different voices inside that are going, just go back to sleep. You ran yesterday. Why do you need to run 2 days on a roll for? Then it's bad for your knees anyways. You know what? Sleep is wealth. If we go to sleep now, and then it's just a version of that on end until you're out the door. At least that's what it is for me. But a big part of knowing your mind well is understanding that that is going to happen with so many, especially the new tasks that you start before they become habit, or the new projects that you start. Like, there's so many people that want to do so many things. Can someone shout out a big thing that you want to do with your life? 5-year, 10-year goal. I just want to hear like 2 examples. Retire. Amen. FIRE. We're all trying to do it. One more. Right? Like WRIT?
Yes.
All right. What do you want to write?
I would love to do like dystopian fiction. I mean, and I've written an article already about being queer and personality. Yeah.
That sounds very interesting. I'm getting Octavia Butler. I'm getting the cages. Okay. And we can talk about that afterwards. So yeah, let's start on the right thing. Actually, retiring. There's a big chasm between where you are now as a professional and where you want to be in terms of retirement. Not just the financial implications, but the logistical implications. And let's say you come from a background where you're the first person in your family that is in a position to not work until you die, right? You're starting, in terms of context and people that you can talk to about this, and examples that you can follow, you're starting from scratch, you're starting from ground zero. With anything that you want to do, AI is able to take you from, oh, this is so big, I don't even know where to start, to, okay, I think I have enough context now to make a first step. Or, let me look into that first step a little bit more. That's a link. I could go and sign up and volunteer for this, or I could go to I can look up like the local financial institutions that have retirement account training, whatever it is, right? The whole point of this is that you can go from idea to execution really fast if you let it. So a typical search. Let's say you are researching the perpetual question, or trying to answer the perpetual question, what do I want to eat for dinner tonight? You know, I used to see memes about people asking that question and being so bored by it, and like dreading it, just this existential over and over again. What are we gonna eat? What are we gonna eat? And as someone who loves food, I was like, this is ridiculous. But the older I get, the more I'm like, wow, it'd be really great if I just had like a pill that made me full and gave me my nutrients, because this is a heavy cognitive work every day, trying to figure out what I'm eating next. It's a lot. Sometimes you just want to watch movies. You don't want to do all this math when it comes to cooking. So what is a big deal, and this is your first skill that I want you to walk away with, since like the 90s, I would say, we've had access to democratized knowledge. So if you knew what you wanted to look for, if you knew I have tofu recipes in my fridge, or I have tofu in my fridge, let me go find a tofu recipe. You can spend the next 15 to 20 minutes being directed in your search and looking for a good recipe for dinner tonight, right? With AI, I want you to think 60 versus 3. the task of figuring out what you want to eat, what ingredients you have, and then what to do with them is a whole process in and of itself. Sometimes it's easy, sometimes it ends up being harder. With AI, you can literally go Claude or chat. We got tofu, we got turkey. What do I do? And then it can spit out answers for you, right? And so this is a super small, trivial example, but it is powerful in that these things add up. It's the reason why, as soon as people get rich, what do? They hire nannies, they hire cooks. These are people that are able to give them their time back. We don't all have access to nannies and to personal chefs and to hired help, but what we can do is lean on these new, available, and often really cheap and affordable tools to be able to get our time back in other ways. So where you can, I want you to start thinking about how can I leverage my time better? How can I use AI to leverage my time better? So a big thing with this is, like I said, if you knew that you had tofu and that's where you wanted to go, that's query-based thinking. You go to Google, you go to your search engine, shout out DuckDuckGo. It's a great search engine, by the way. You can type in DuckDuckGo, or Gokoja, another great search engine. You can type in tofu recipes. But with AI, you can have a conversation. So this is query-based thinking versus conversational thinking. When you make that shift and when you realize that the skill that we've had for the last several decades as a collective society who has access to the internet, who has access to computers, is that we've been trained to use query-based thinking to go and find the answers that we're looking for. So if you're looking for answers about the Birmingham city budget, you can go and look up Birmingham city budget. But oftentimes, in fact, 99% of the time, what we're trying to get the answer for is more amorphous than that. The beauty of thinking with AI means that instead of having to know where you're trying to go, you can start with that amorphous idea, and through conversation and through iterative back and forth with whatever AI of your choice is, you can get to that answer a lot faster. And this becomes super relevant when we think about things that apply in our jobs. Has anyone heard of using Python to automate tasks? It's like a huge book series that got a lot of acclaim. But it's super daunting to go from, yeah, I want to automate some of my tasks to, how many books do I have to read? When? How much time am I supposed to put towards this? And that's a lot to process versus being able to go to chat and say, here's a task that I do every day or I do multiple times a month. Are there things that I can put in place to automate or to make this easier? And it takes you from that amorphous thought of, I want to be able to breeze through my work easier. I want to be able to have more consistent reporting to actually doing it, right? And instead of you having to read multiple books, probably consult someone else too, you can get the code necessary, the logic necessary to get that task done. As long as you're able to articulate what it is that you actually want. And when you go from query-based thinking to conversational thinking with AI, you're able to do that really quickly. And so when you switch your skill set, and when you add that into your repertoire of how you interact with technology, the sky's the limit in terms of what you're able to do next. So, yeah, that's point one. As I love to say, we used to be prior to 2022, we were in the age of democratized knowledge. We are now in the age of democratized intelligence. Meaning, people can go from zero context to 50% of the way in terms of understanding things around in the world. Use these tools to do just that. And another concept that I definitely want to get across here is how much is demanded of us every day. In addition to taking care of your own body, which is a lot, by the way, human bodies are really high maintenance. I'm having a hard time believing this is the most efficient system that nature was able to cobble together. But, we'll see what happens in another few millennia or million years. So I'm sure it'll get better. Wish I could be there for when they're able to metabolize sunlight into food and not have to figure out what to eat for dinner every night. But your brain is about 2% of your body mass, but it makes up about 20% of the calories that are burned throughout the day. As in, your cognition, what it takes to have your body functioning, and not just literally, but also to interact with other people, to socialize, to do what you have to do to move. That's about 20% of the energy that you have that's used every day just on cognition. Which is crazy, considering that, again, the brain is 2% of your mass. But she's very calorically hungry. So what I want you to understand here is that AI is such a powerful tool because you can leverage it to make the most of that 20%. Whereas before, maybe your top 2 things that you have to get done that day, you can now get done those top 4 things, which is like a small difference, but a big one, and those things add up pretty quickly. So I want to take you through a more concrete example, what we're going to do. And so we're going to spend some time with our boy, DJ T. Look at him. That's my great skin. So I found this opinion piece, and this is what I'm going to take you through is a workflow that I do almost on a daily basis. This is not entirely, because my self-discipline isn't all the way there yet, but it has taken the place of quite a bit of my doom scrolling. So let's say I come across a claim, whether it's a headline that I'm reading or a TikTok. If it's a TikTok, I'll go to a TikTok transcript generator, put in the link, and copy the transcript. And same thing if it's another video form like YouTube or on another social media site. In this case, I just pulled up an opinion piece because what I also want you to understand is how you can use AI as an extension of your thinking. So what I'm about to do is I'm just going to select everything on this. We're going to Control A, Control C. Okay, we now have everything that this article is saying. But the opinion piece is titled, Trump's tariffs may not do what he thinks. So when I see this title, immediately I'm thinking that it's probably going to be, hopefully, an economist or somebody who is referencing an economist that's talking about the impacts of tariffs and how that might be different from Trump's rhetoric. But that's a lot of information to take in because I have an international business degree, but I got that about 6 years ago. It's been a long time since I've been in the classroom. So I'm going to show you a workflow that I do. I just copied this article, and I'm going back to my favorite LLM that I use all day, every day. This is my boy Claude. In terms of the safety of AI, I recommend Claude a lot. One, I think it comes out with better answers than ChatGPT and has better reasoning. Two, Anthropic, not that you should not be putting sensitive information into AI anyways. Personally, I don't consider my musings about my friendships and my relationship with my mother as proprietary information. So I'm okay with telling Claude those things. But maybe don't put in your yeah. Maybe that's yours. Maybe that's a private number that you just have for you. But I'm gonna ask Claude to do something for me. So this is another tiny tip that I'm putting in here. Often, what I'll do as part of my workflow is I'll open up a Google Doc and I will speak to it directly. Let me see. It might just be easier to do this on my laptop. That's exactly what it's gonna be easier to do. Hey Claude, so I want to understand the intellectual honesty of this piece. Can you break down the claims that are being made and fact check them, provide evidence where you can, and then I would also like a visual that quickly communicates to me the validity of the claims that are being made. So my goal in reading and processing this document is, oh, my bad. My spelling is great, by the way. If you challenge me to an impromptu spelling bee, I will whoop you, okay? But if you ask Claude, Claude would be like, I think she has an 8th grade reading level. Yeah, the fingers get ahead of the brain sometimes, which is me trying to say that my brain is great, and it's okay. But what I'm about to do right now is copy and paste this prompt into Claude. But notice, we're not prompt engineering, and I want you to abandon prompt engineering as a concept and embrace conversational, iterative communication with LLMs. I think prompt engineering and like those different templates and documents can be helpful to maybe pick up new ideas about how you can be more clear about what it is that you actually want to get out of the conversation. But don't pay anybody to take their prompt engineering course. You probably don't need to take a prompt engineering course. You just have to get better at understanding what it is that you actually want. And as you make the switch from query-based thinking to conversational thinking or co-thinking with AI, you'll get better at that and actually getting what you want. So, what I'm doing now, oopsies, I'm going into my clipboard and then I just pasted the article in there. So now that's exactly what it's about to do. It's about to help me analyze this opinion piece. Because I take understanding the world around me really seriously. I think it's so fun, and not just fun, but my responsibility, especially living in a country that has so big of an impact on the rest of the globe, to know what it is that I'm talking about. So I'll often use Claude just to understand what's even being said and to figure out what context I'm missing. So of course, read the article yourself. Highly recommend that. But right now, Claude has put together a dashboard for us. So if I am in the shower and doing this workflow, which I do, when you get started, you get addicted. I'm telling you. Because you'll be like, wait a second, I don't have to take this author's word for it. And I get to have a conversation about it. It gets really fun. So just at a glance, it's identified like 4 or 5 different claims that are being made. And if we're just looking at this like the dashboard that's put together, we've got a pretty decent idea about the quality of this article. It's telling us, okay, key claims analysis. So I'm going to close this for a second. Manufacturing status claim. The author states Trump's "we don't make anything anymore" is incorrect. Oh, Trump is wrong about something. This is a surprise. And it tells me what the article is citing and why it's claiming that it's verified. Now, of course, this is just a starting point. If I really want to and have the time, then I would then take it upon myself to go and individually fact check the claims that are being made and how it's evaluating them. But what makes this so incredible is that it helps do some of that competition for you, because what I want is a contextual understanding of how true this is. I want to understand how it fits in the pie of how America works, right? And this is getting me significantly closer to that than just simply reading the article on my own butt. Does anyone, and I know we're going through this a little fast, but just based off of the headline title, and let me remind you what it is, does anyone have a question that if you were able to talk to the author of this article, that you would ask? I'm going to give 2 questions. Yes?
What impact is it going to make when he was trying to increase these tariffs and stuff? Like, what is that actually going to do? I mean, we know that, but like, what is it going to do to our economy?
So the way I would frame that question, this is me interpreting your question. If you're doing this process on your own, of course you can literally just ask that. And Claude on mobile, the app anyways, does have the ability for you to talk directly to it, like audio. And that's also why I'm able to do this in the shower, not texting in the shower. I click the microphone icon, and like. And another thing, what So I'm about to ask that question. Essentially, you want to understand the impact this is going to have on like people.
Can you explain the primary, secondary, and tertiary effects of the tariffs as proposed? What do you think, what context do you think is missing from this? Or is there another perspective that could be included here that would increase my understanding of how all this works?
And then I stop the audio. That's called learning. And then I'm taking this over a lot. And again, if I'm on mobile, I can do all this in-app because I can just talk directly to it. And so now it's communicating to me specifically in the way that I wanted it framed. What are the impacts of this? And the thing is, you can go back and forth. If you see something that you think is fishy, if you see something that you think is off, it uses mermaid to make it ReRev. It does that sometimes. If you want to see the breath, I can email it to you. But we can understand better what are the impacts. And if you wanted to get specific about, actually, let's do just that.
Create a table that demonstrates the populations that will be impacted and contextualize this visually with colors as well as with numbers so I can understand at a high level who will be impacted the most.
And another thing here that I'm using here is different prompts to be creative about comprehension. So one of my big things, especially as a consultant, is how can I reduce the cognitive burden of the person that I'm communicating with, right? Visuals go so far for that. Often when you're reading these kind of opinion pieces or coming across things in the news, they lack maybe all the context that you really want to have for things like this. With, that was bad. Oh, we also did it by geographic location, port cities, okay. I find that side? What happened? Okay, y'all figure it out. Okay. But we're getting what's happening here, okay? We're using this tool to help us both visually and contextually understand this piece better and be able to have a conversation with it. I'd love to see what you're able to do with that. And this is, when I say use AI as an extension of your thinking, notice it didn't necessarily give us, I don't know, a conservative economist interpretation of this article, right? You have to ask for that. So something that is also really important to understand here, AI is not a single source of truth, and I think sometimes it gets communicated like that. When you think of it instead as an extension of your thinking, so as in what you bother to ask, what you bother to think about, and communicate with it is what you're going to see, and what you don't communicate with it, and what you don't ask for, you're not going to see. I'm not going to be able to see contradictions or things that fall outside of this until I ask for it. So a big thing here is when you're identifying, because if I said what I want is to get close to the truth, then my next step in talking to this and figuring out what's going on is going to be to ask it, okay, so what's a contradictory opinion? And what basis would that opinion have? Because I'm trying to see what's closest to reality and understand how other people are interpreting these things. So any questions about this before we move on to the next part? Y'all get it. And AI as an extension of your personal cognition is a huge takeaway in how do I go from idea to implementation.
You spent 30 minutes of your 45.
In my defense, it was like very light coloring. I've budgeted glasses into next month's budget, so it'll get fixed. It'll get fixed. But 7 plus or minus 2. I hope y'all can see that. But 7 plus or minus 2. Miller's law refers to the notion that the average person can hold about 7 items of information in their working memory. plus or minus 2 items. That's not a lot. I think it's safe to say that we live in the single most complex time to be human than any other time before. Simply because we have so many sources of information, and not just sources of information, our society is more complex. That's how we've been able to get more people out of poverty. That's how we're able to spread technology through having a more diverse and complex society. And I'm so grateful for AI because the level of cognition and knowledge required to sensibly navigate today's society is more than any one individual could do on their own. And so I'm really grateful that we have access to this extension of cognition that I'm able to use to understand the world around me better and not get taken advantage of, or at least not as much. We're trying. And so a big part of the AI conversation is its energy use. Energy use, water use, resource use, and that's so beyond fair. Right now, data centers make up about 1% of our global energy use, which is relatively small. And AI makes up an unknown, so when I say AI, I mean like our daily use of it and training the models, that makes up an unknown percentage right now of that 1%. However, AI alone is projected to reach 11% of our global energy usage by 2030. That's a big number. That said, I am firmly of the opinion that the trade-off that we're getting here is worth it. And that's defensible on a few things. In order for us to, and so let me oscillate between these two numbers for a second. 800 million. So after the end of the Cultural Revolution in China, and I use China as an example because their government was really intentional about how they spread the wealth in the period of like the 80s through now, because they were purposely trying to raise as many people as possible on the property. And as, I don't know if this room knows, but allow me to emphasize that poverty is a choice. It is a policy choice.
But they killed 64 million people in the Cultural Revolution.
Absolutely it did. After that Cultural Revolution, when it was time to rebuild a society that had been just pummeled, truly, they were then able to institute multiple macroeconomic policies that eventually, over the course of several decades, raised hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. And we have a similar story in the US, except our poverty improvement numbers stalled in the 90s, I believe. And again, that was a policy choice. So I chose China as an example just because they chose different policies. And that's a big deal because there's almost a direct correlation between the rise of GDP and how many people they were able to lift out of poverty. Now, of course, there's lots of asterisks in that, as there are with our poverty numbers. Lots of asterisks, lots of prefaces. That said, productivity, especially when we take means to spread that wealth, can make a decided difference in not just one individual's life or in a rich person's life, but in everyone's life when we do it right. I firmly believe that with AI in our pockets and being able to use technology like this, that we have the ability to navigate how complex this world is and to be able to understand the challenges that we're being faced. Because it is absurd. In order to make it through the next 4 years or 2 years or whatever is going to happen, we're going to need a lot of tools in our tool belt as individual Americans. Please be encouraged to use AI as that tool in the tool belt to help you understand the world around you and to metabolize the more complex things. We do not have time for each of us to go back to graduate school and get doctorates in political science before we can go out and save our democracy. We don't have time. So we're going to use the tools at our disposal that can help us move quickly and move smart and together. But the 6,610 watt hours versus the 0.3 watt hours, now these numbers are not necessarily totally comparable. But what I wanted to, the second point that I wanted to make in this section, aside from I do think that the energy usage here is worth it, is that the other things in our lives, let's say taking private transportation, so how many people here either own a car or use a car on a daily basis? Okay, how many people here eat meat? Yeah, if you're worried about and you want to take steps to reduce your individual environmental impact, start there. Please do not start with your ability to extend your cognition and to understand the world better around you. I see a lot of headlines that I think guilt trip and sensationalize the impact of AI's resource usage. And I think that's to such a detriment, especially to the people who care. Because people who care about the environmental resource usage are exactly the people that we need to have a deep, contextual, and practical understanding of AI. So be really informed and get specific. And that's the key word that I want you to walk away with here. It is okay to be completely skeptical of a technology. It's okay to have reservations. Do not allow that to be what cuts you off from not just joining progress, but shaping the progress narrative. Because right now we're still in the early days, and there's plenty of time for you to go from query-based thinking to conversational thinking. There's plenty of time for you to understand more intimately throughout your day how you can use LLMs and AI as an extension of your cognition, as an extension of your ability to go from idea to execution, and build speed and build momentum, and do what you can and do it faster. That's worth it. That is worth it. And so when you are skeptical about these things, or you want to reduce your environmental usage, start with the big ticket items. One burger is that 6,000 number. Growing the beef, feeding the animal, shipping it to where you are. You eating a salad is doing more than you not using AI by a pretty big margin. So that's what I heard there. And I don't really do debates. I'm not gonna go back and forth with you. If you don't want to do it, you gotta do it. That's okay with me. But I urge you, if you're going to not use these tools, to be very specific as to why, and back that up with numbers. Because I promise you, once you do the math, you're gonna be like, oh, let me investigate a little bit more before I block myself off from progress. So as we reach the end, I want you to understand the impact that AI stands to have on our society. Now, of course, we all know that there's a very big wealth distribution problem that we're having right now. Income inequality is a huge crisis that can have some pretty devastating impacts. And right now, it kind of looks like it's only going to get worse. But if we're able to put in policies and at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, that can redistribute that wealth, we can all see the benefits of that rise in $15.7 trillion, which is expected to be AI's additional impact on the world GDP by 2030, which is insane. That's not even a full 5 years away now. Or net was at 4.10. 4.10. That's not a thing. That's not a number. That's not a real number. But you get what I'm saying.
4 years and 10 months.
Exactly. That's what I meant. That's what I meant. You get me.
That's pretty specific.
That's very specific. That's a really big deal. That's a lot of money. And I think about how many children go to bed hungry. I think about how many industries are underdeveloped or how many economies are struggling. And I know that if we're able to use the tools at our disposal to take what we're able to do to the next level, to go from idea to execution and do it 10 times faster, we can make a really big difference in so many people's lives, let alone our own. And 15.7 trillion is a really big ass number. Here's a bigger one, infinity. And that's the corny way that I will end this presentation, which is when you embrace the power of what this technology can do, when you decide to use it on purpose, when you decide to use it every day to understand and get a better relationship between this technology and how you use it, I promise you will get to a place where you're able to infinitely scale up your impact. And those little moments add up fast, right? We started this presentation talking about the perpetual existential dread, figuring out what you're gonna eat tonight. When that time shortens from an hour's worth of work to 10 minutes worth of work, and you're able to figure out how to do that in other parts of your life, you're able to shorten that gap. You're able to get your time back. You're able to enjoy life and choose how you spend that free time and how you bring your ideas to life with more intention and purpose. And I urge you to do so. Yeah, I think that's it. If you would like me to do professional development presentations for your organization, you can find my contact info at ReRev.io, or you can see me after this.
I think we have time for one question. If anyone has a question. Yes, Gina?
Can you make a case for how safe this is? I work at a nonprofit where they've recently banned us from recording meetings and things like that because they don't know who's going to end up with this information around how we deal with federal funding cuts. So how safe can we say this is?
Very good question. So there are, when we're talking about chatbots, so let's say like Claude, each of the big kahunas that are running, that have these type of programs available, have their own set of ethics and mission statements. I recommend, and I'm so big on Claude, not just because it comes out with better results, but because Anthropic, the company that owns and develops Claude, is privacy focused. So they don't use your data to train models. That said, if your organization is like, we have very sensitive information, but we would like to still extend the cognition of our organization, you do have the option of, and it's a little more time intensive, it's a little more resource intensive, of downloading a AI model locally. The practicalities of doing this for everyone, and browser-based is definitely going to be a little easier. But there's, as I love to say, there's more than one way to skin a cat. And so if that's a real focus, one, casually, I'd recommend using Claude. But practically, if y'all are serious about wanting to embed it into your organization, there can be offline ways to do that. And we can go a little deeper into that afterwards. I think we'll see more questions.